So I thought, or at least expected, that Freya, who is also chair to this group, would come, but I haven't received any message from her, so I'm absolutely unsure what's on. I don't know. So actually, anyway, we can have a small meeting. I think Mike, you've been in the at the first meeting, but you, Jari, is this correct?
Yes, Jari.
Pronouncing that way. You haven't been, I think.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so just yeah, just introduce yourself, and so we got known to each other, and I tell you, and I'll give you a short overview.
Okay, so my name is Jari Friman. I work at the Tampere University Library. So librarian is my profession, and I'm part of our data management support team in the library, and also I work quite closely with our data protection team. So my job is also to advise researchers with GDPR issues when they are fulfilling their privacy notices and that kind of things. So that's the reason I'm here. And actually, I don't exactly know what the repeat session means. Is this something that has already been held before, or is this something continuing from the last session?
Well, the depends on the decision. So our decision was basically that, but and I thought it would have been made known to all attendees, but seems not. That the first meeting we had was at, I think it was at 8 or 9 UTC, 8 I think UTC or 7 UTC, rather early. So people from other parts of the world would have problems to attend, or at least it would be rather uncomfortable to be there. So we decided to have the repeat meeting really as a second meeting to address all those people who could probably not attend to the first. But I'm afraid this wasn't really clear to everyone, because some of the repeat sessions are indeed just recordings or replays of the original meeting. But I saw also the chance to continue on our discussion from the first meeting as well. Because we have got to some, some clear, clear point. So that's the reason why we had this meeting. And unfortunately, and second, and then there was also a further reason for that, because Freya, the other chair of the meeting, was unable to attend on Tuesdays. And so I thought it would be a good idea to have this now, as she said this would be fine for her. I don't know why she missed it. So, well, we'll try our best. So, yeah. So I'll introduce myself as well, so that you got known to me as well. I'm heading a biobank in Germany, a centralized biobank. I'm responsible for the whole laboratory and body fluid section, and I'm in the field of privacy and sensitive data for quite some time. For that reason, we're strongly involved in the whole issues of privacy, patient privacy in that case. Well, and We had, in the meantime, there was this sensitive data meeting. I don't know whether you have been there, which was quite interesting because there's clearly some overlap with privacy, but in some parts I think it's different. So these are things to be sorted out and I think coordinated with this sensitive data interest group as well. And Mike, you have been here on Tuesday. So, but just that Jari also gets known to you. Would you kindly introduce yourself in some 2 sentences or so?
Yes, I work at the Data Archiving and Networked Services, a data archive in The Hague in the Netherlands. The archive is predominantly in the humanities and social sciences, but does handle other data, including some from medical side of things as well. I'm not a specialist in this area of privacy. However, there's been a number of projects which I've worked on, a number of areas where has led me to an interest in more of the, how should we say, edge cases of privacy, where it's not quite the standard laws and the proposed laws that exist. It is more in those areas where you kind of having to, as an archivist or a librarian, have to think on your feet a little bit because they're not quite the normal rules. And those kind of things have interested me in the past, particularly about an extension of what is privacy to beyond the normal individual, the living person, and perhaps not necessarily to business side of things of privacy, but into an extension of family and community as well. So those are some of the areas of interest of me, but I'm not a specialist in this at all. So I'm only here because I was sort of involved in the first attempts of having a interest group on this area, and came back to take a look at what's happening. And in a way, that's also why I was here today as well, just to see who else was interested and what kind of range of areas, if anybody had thought of anything more. But as it's not too many more people here, it's perhaps it was the first group that had the most interest in this.
Yeah.
So that's me.
Well, that's okay. Nice to have you here. So I don't know, Jari, if you have been to former meetings of this interest group. Actually,
no, I haven't.
No, you haven't. So you actually don't know the history. So it was initially well started together with NISO. That was by Todd and Bonnie and Natty sometime. Well, they stepped back from being chairs, so there was only Freya and me left. And we discussed a lot about that, also with the RDA management and secretaries, and decided to continue this work, or at least to relaunch this group, now independent from NISO, and probably with a different focus. Then we'll see to that. Well, unfortunately, there's no one from the rest of the world here, so we're all situated in Europe. So our main interest was to also attract people from other continents, so it does not become so Eurocentric here. But well, it is as it is. So you can find any information if you have looked at the page, the meeting page on the internet, you will have seen that there's a link to the collaborative notes. I have amended that for today's meeting. So there's the meeting notes from the first meeting, and I've left some space for today's meeting, and so also attached a new table for today's meeting. So it would be great if you could enter your name and contact information. So in this table, so we also get note to you. So we have your reference as well here. Okay. Question is clearly, I don't want to waste anyone's time here. No question about that. I'm happy doing that together with you. There's no question about that. But feel free to say, well, I don't think that it's, if you don't think that it's really making a lot of sense, so if you just discuss with each other here. What's your opinion?
So, so you mean just like informal conversation, or
we can have an informal conversation. I can, if you have the meeting notes, yes, before you, and what you can see there is that one issue was the sensitive data IG. I don't know. Do you know this interest group? This has been formed very recently only, and is, I think, still in a state of developing and finding a place. So this is clearly an issue, and there were some ideas which Frian put forward, which could be one about best practices. Yeah, so this is about best practice for pseudonymization or anonymization, in particular when we're thinking about effectivity or of anonymization processes, what kind of degrees of anonymity can be achieved at all. Do you have any particular interest which is not mentioned or not there in the list?
Well, I think quite recently many researchers, but also students, they ask us about social media data and basically data that's from the internet sources, like these conversation channels and that kind of stuff. So it's not always clear whether it's a private data or it is some sort of what kind of data it is. It is what kinds of privacy. Is it GDPR data at all, or is it public data? And that kind of thing. That's
okay.
Yeah.
Mike, I think you need not raise your hand. I think you could just keep going. It's no need here in this small group.
I think that is an interesting point about the issues dealing, as we did discuss a little bit last time, about data from social media, which I think in itself, understanding the issues there is challenging and could be an important aspect for a lot of librarians and also archivists as well, particularly when people are trying to deposit data and it includes some of this sort of stuff in it. For us, we'd also have interview data as well, which is also another interesting area, which sort of comes on towards the edge of that. Sometimes you've got interviews which are clearly under an agreement that you've asked beforehand, etc. And sometimes there's a little bit more of a problem that it's maybe a vox pop type of data. So that is of interest. For me, the other area is the cross-boundary usage of data, of private data or privacy data. That is always been a challenge, and I think probably still is a challenge when we're dealing with things under sort of this grand scheme of FAIR. This is the one area which becomes very, very, very complicated, I think. I do know that each country tends to have, within Europe at least, have very different rules about access and viewing sensitive data. And I think that has a lot of interesting challenges, perhaps. So therefore, best practices even perhaps around international usage across boundaries is quite an important one as well.
Yeah. So I think this, just put it in the notes. I just took these, well, terms now here, so just feel free to elaborate on that a bit more. One thing is, I think I understand, Jari, very good. I understood you correctly, to say that a major problem is to classify the data with regard to their privacy, probable privacy issues or not. Yeah, in as far they might be private data or not. Yeah, I think it's very different, because I'm from the biomedical field. This is mostly quite clear. Yeah, that basically all kind of health data are in a way private data. Yeah, so there's mostly no discussion about that. I think it's very much different in the social sciences or yeah, economic sciences. Yeah, where it's more difficult to decide on that. Yeah. So what's your experience then, Jari, with the communication with those working with the data or providing data? Have you just seen the difficulties or misunderstanding? Or
yes, I think one of the question is that how to inform participants, or should they be considered as participants at all? So how to inform that, okay, I'm doing this my research and I'm collecting this data from this channel or social media platform or whatever. How to inform the participants and that kind of stuff is. And if I took some citations or quotes from these conversations, so how and attach those quotes to my research paper or my thesis or whatever. So how should these be considered as personal information, because you can connect those quotes to some specific people, and that's you know, that kind of stuff quite yeah, I don't know how to describe it more.
No, I understand. I think just as you say it, I say we had no overlap. Now comes to my mind. I had most recently had a discussion with someone who's planning a project on patient-reported outcome, and they thought about using information they can collect on social media from patients. That's true, exactly. So, and I said, I'm not sure whether this is a good idea. But they really they try to follow the patients on the social media to see how they report to their relatives or friends or so on their health and their health outcome, and people tend to tell others on the social media much more than they would tell their physician, yeah, and that's and that's the reason why they tried that. But again, yeah, here we come together. I don't know whether this is a good idea. I had some bad feeling about this idea, but actually, you would say if they put it on the internet, they want to have it shared, but maybe they are not aware of that, the secondary use of these data. Yeah. Yeah, basically it's kind of a secondary use, yeah. Do you have any regulations on this already somewhere, or is there some idea how to cope with this problem with social media data? I must admit I've never heard anything about these.
I would say, of course, there are a lot of researchers who does research with social media data, and actually we are having this small local conference on this social media use of social media data and research, and we have asked some researchers to tell about how they deal with these issues and what kind of data they have collected from Twitter and other platforms that there are, and so on. So we try to collect some examples of how to deal with those issues and tell those to others as well. Many students especially want to use these kind of social media data, and maybe they can be at almost any faculty basically, because and not necessarily their supervisors, they are not so familiar with these issues, because maybe they make their thesis in, for example, in some technical faculty, but still they want to use these, for example, social media or other kind of data. So they cannot ask their supervisors because they are not familiar with this subject at all necessarily, and so then they contact us, and yeah.
So if you had a meeting on that, was there some consensus on that, or how to cope with this problem, or?
No, we don't actually. I have talked with our data protection officer in our university and the data protection team and so on, but we have quite new data protection officer, and she's very she knows the GDPR very well, but maybe she doesn't know the research context that well. So and she works mostly in the or institutional level things, organizational level things. So the research context is not so familiar with all the data with the data protection team also, and so they want to ask someone, and that's the our research data support team that they end up asking.
Yeah, that's the problem. This I think I don't know what your experience is, but the same is in ours. What with regard to scientific use of data, our data protection officers at the university are quite at a loss, because they know how to handle some information on the staff and on salaries and stuff and like that. There's all these information, but they don't really have an idea on research, and so that's making quite difficult. What's your experience in then, Mike?
Actually, something fairly similar, although it was on a particular project, international project. The data was to be stored within the Netherlands. So consequently, at a higher level, institution got involved and went to GDPR officer or whatever it was at the time. I think it was pre-GDPR. And then it went to lawyers, and then it got very nasty, very problematic, because they were, of course, trying their best to cover the institutions back as far as possible, but it stopped us doing anything. We had to find a route around it. Eventually we did, but it was quite tough to because it was purely metadata, that it was a registry for metadata, yet for some reason, the privacy officers were not that keen on even making that available. Even there was chances that the possibility of a name from various countries being in the documents, but often they were historic names anyway. So it was a little bit more challenging. There were occasionally names of depositors and things like that, which they were concerned about, but it wasn't at the same kind of level that you're necessarily dealing with. And yet it felt like they were trying to very much be very restrictive. I don't think we'll ever be in a position where we can make that clearer for them when you do come across a lawyer getting involved in this. And I don't know whether we'll ever be able to follow that, but maybe there is something where we're talking about best practice is perhaps how to explain to them exactly what is involved. That might be part of the best practice part of it, because I think we've all agreed that your GDPR people and lawyers don't actually understand research as widely as they perhaps should. And maybe that's another area, just to a slight aside to the standard best practices that can help a project, a research project, actually get underway. Even if it's having it under an ethical review or whatever, it still probably needs to have something about this in there. So whether that's something to add to the list, or maybe we're making the possible projects a little too many. There are many areas to think about, so this could be something else.
Well, yeah. Well, your experiences, I'm afraid that's always the same. When lawyers come in, it becomes really messed up. Yeah. Yeah. But I think this could be really a good project here. How to cope with the secondary use of social media data. This sounds like a good project. If you have some, I must admit, I have no one at hand who's really experienced in that field. If you know of someone, or if you could contribute it, I think this would be a good thing to work on and to collect some knowledge, some experience on that, and to come probably really to something like a best practice, how to use that, and under which condition it's possible, under which not, or to which extent, and so I think this is a problem that touches many other projects. So
I think it may be possible. The last meeting had Janis in there, who is part of CESDA, the consortium of European social science data archives. There might be more knowledge amongst a good number of those people. They may well have been either directly involved. I certainly know of one researcher I'm still in contact with who did a lot with terrorism and social media, which I think probably is very much at that edge of needing to know how you deal with that sort of data. So there might be some, I can get back in contact with her, but there might be some who are within an archival world who may have more knowledge, particularly amongst the social sciences archives, because they really do have researchers who are doing quite a bit of work in this sort of area, and they may well have some good information. They may also, I don't think CESDA actually has a guidance on social media yet, but they might well do. I haven't had a quick look at their what they're doing recently. They tend to be still working on some other areas, but they might have some might be some knowledge amongst the community there.
Yeah, and actually in Tampere University in Finland, where I work, is we have this Finnish Social Science Data Archive actually in connection with our university. So and actually we will have next week this small seminar on social media data, and actually one of those experts in Finnish Social Science Data Archive will be she will give a talk in our seminar. So I think
They're also part of SESDA as well.
Yeah.
It sounds really interesting. So this could be probably a good idea to have someone who's can contribute some experience and some knowledge on that. At the next meeting, we can, I think, have a meeting in the near future, independent of the plenaries, and collect ideas on this topic of social media. We could make some, let's say, focus meeting on that. I think this, I think we're good. So you have, Jari, you have got this, well, at least some contact to them, and could probably ask also someone to attend a meeting of our group.
I can ask. Yeah.
Would be great. It need be a 2 hours talk. It's just, let's say, sort of a keynote. Yeah. So some 10 minutes or 15 minutes just to give an impression, or if someone is happy to do more, it's also fine. Yeah. But yeah. So I think we can really plan for another meeting where we can work on more on this topic. Surely not this year. But, when will be the next plenary? This is in Korea, I think. Yeah. Yeah, it's in June. Okay, there's quite some time in. Okay, so we could do this before. And it's the International Data Week in 2022. It's in June, end of June. Well, we'll see whether anyone will go to live to Korea. But what do you think? How long will it take to prepare for such a, let's say, kind of brainstorming meeting on this topic? Can we have this in, let's say, February or so? Do you think it's makeable, doable?
Maybe, yeah.
Well, so I would I would propose this to the whole interest group and see whether we can have a focus meeting on that. We got to coordinate this, and Mike, if you have someone at hand who could also give some ideas in.
I was just going to send a message to the SESDA network
Excellent.
more broadly and see if there's anybody there who could or is interested or thinks that that's a good idea. I mean, again, it is very European centric, of course.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we're stuck with that. But we can look a bit further, see if there's anybody amongst that who has some knowledge about that. Either obviously Finland does, Sweden may well do as well, because S&D was involved in this. ADP is part of SESDA as well. So you've got at least 3-4 members of the social sciences community here already, interestingly, within this group, all with perhaps slightly different interests in it. So from that perspective, you've already got a few So
Okay.
it could be a starting point for that. May I
Very
ask
good.
another question? I was interested about this best practices for pseudo-anonymization and effective anonymization. Is that still high up on proposals, or are we going to have to go through a process of seeing what is actually, again, asking whether this, because we never really got to that last time, as is this an interest to people?
Well, I regard this really relevant topic. It's more on the technical side, no question about that. But I think at least my impression is that many people who have now the GDPR before them and think about that do read these terms, but actually have no real clue what this means. Yeah, there are some specifications in the GDPR, but they do not really, they at least touch only the surface, yeah, or the technical surface. There's much more under that. I think from the opinions in the last meeting, I would conclude that there's clear interest in that, and at that point I could contribute one or two things, and I know someone I could invite who's working on the topic of anonymization and did a lot of research on that. I'm sure he would be happy to contribute. We are also in touch through the European Open Science Cloud and BMRI and stuff. So there's, I think, no problem to get him here.
There are some people around also working on synthetic data as well, as a way of getting around the anonymization problems by that. I don't know if that's covered so much in the biomed fields, but it certainly is there within the social sciences.
Well, synthetic data, that's really, it's a problem in my opinion. If you want to draw any conclusions, you will always draw the conclusions you have put in the data. So you can put your conclusions within the data and then have a clear logic. No, this. But maybe it's in the other field might be different. But in the field of biomedicine, I'd say I always say that's, even if even real data which have been to a certain degree anonymized by k-anonymity and so on, and sometimes even obfuscated data, they are no longer really usable in a way because they contain biases already, and this I'm not really happy about this idea. So much to that. So much for that. What do you think? Should we have from this topic now? I would have the feeling that it might be better to have separate meetings on these topics, because they have wide range and a lot of different aspects. So, and not everyone is probably interested in everything. So we could plan for two different things. One thing is more in the technical field, like pseudonymization, anonymization techniques, and the other one on the the whole field of social media data, how to handle them, what are the limits, how far can they be regarded as really open data, and to what extent?
I think it would be a very good idea to, if we're looking at those as topics for the this interest group, then they should be split, because you're going to get different people attending, because you're right, it's a different interest and different skills involved in those areas. I think you'll definitely need a difference. There's also a lot more work being done in other non-research or non-research data, or purely research data, should I say, on the anonymization from areas like from the National Statistical Offices as well. And they do a lot in this area. So I don't think you'll necessarily get them involved in RDA, although I have seen one or two turning up to RDA things in the past. They may well want to get involved somewhere there, or they may not, but that is at least an area for a different set of best practice information than just necessarily biomed. Just a thought.
Yeah, no, that's I think yeah, it's going through the list of members. I saw that one or two who were probably from some institution on statistics institutes handling governmental data and so yeah, so they could be interested in that, or on the other side they probably have, as you say, already some conceptualization on this and may contribute to that. Okay, so I think we can go the way that we have planned for 2 separate meetings, one on the more technical aspects, one more on the this social media issues in general, and then see how we can put this together so this interest group becomes a new drive. And that's something I wanted to have, because this is a topic of quite high relevance. Yeah, Mike, you have been to the sensitive data meeting as well, I think. Yeah.
I've not been to it.
I thought of saying your name.
I wish I had.
Oh.
I didn't realize. I didn't notice it there.
Yeah. I suppose there's some sort of recording of the meeting as well, so it should be possible to look into that. It was quite interesting, but I had the feeling that that still in the phase of orientation in the field of data. So they thinking about what is sensitive data at all, and which fields are to be covered and covered in which respect sensitive data are to be seen. My gut feeling is that's they're currently going very clearly in the direction of a risk-based approach. Yeah, so data becomes sensitive when there's a risk, basically. Yeah, which makes sense in a way, I think. Well, we got to see to that, because maybe there's more in it, more to it than that.
I was about to say there's a lot more challenges, and it's a more fundamental approach than perhaps going for known topics like here, like anonymization, like a definite issue that has been identified with social media data, which sort of changes the emphasis perhaps across the 2 interest groups, which might be quite a good way of separating them out. For me, there are other areas of interest which wouldn't be touched by this group, which would be more of an interest for me to go to the other group on things like, surprisingly, things like historic data, which even I guess it's sort of things like contemporary history data rather than medieval, but that can still have some privacy or sensitive issues in it, as can other areas where it's sometimes, like we've mentioned before, sensitive data in archaeology, for instance. The location of a find or a dig can be surprisingly highly sensitive. For instance, if they're checking on the archaeology under where a brand new road is going to be put through a village, or an airport runway is going to be dug somewhere, that is sensitive information, but it is not in that same level of privacy that we're looking at here. So there's some very interesting, both dealing with data that is, as you say, at risk or has a risk aspect to it, that if it's released is a problem, but it's not necessarily. So I think you're right, that could be quite a nice way of separating the two out if they do go down that risk route, and this goes down a very clear for existing methods, etc. route for these sort of data that we know about. It's one way of perhaps discussing it between the two groups.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't disturb much, because the church bells are ringing, and as you can see, I'm sitting in the attic, and the church is, well, I'd say some 20 meters across in the road. So, but if the microphone is good enough, it shouldn't disturb so much. So,
no.
Because it's a hell if you have put on your headphones. Yeah, well, this is, yeah, I think this is an aspect. You have the really, yeah, delineate the sensitivity and the privacy, and there is a lot in sensitive data from my view, which I see in the field of biomedical data. If you look at genetic data, yeah, someone may very well consent that it's fine to use them and to give them away and have them in research projects. But those people forget that these information not only contain information, these genetic data contain not only information of yourself, but of everyone who is related to you. So, yeah,
the HALA
and
problem.
that makes it a problem, because you consent, you do a consent on something, you should include the opinion of others as well. You should ask your family. Yeah, and people don't do that, and that's something I came across most recently when in a discussion. I say, well, if you look in the internet, yeah, there's so many genealogical websites where you can put down your upload your genetic data as well for ancestry and so. And this information is sometimes really easily accessible.
I have heard from various sources that particularly the genealogy data and ancestry data, particularly from the genetic side of that, has been actually used for secondary purposes already. Yeah. So for me, the classic one is the immortal cell line. Is it HALA?
Yeah, it's Henrietta.
That's the classic story.
This is a classical example.
It's always the best example of research not understanding the sources.
Yeah.
And I have somebody coming to my door, so I'm afraid to say I'm going to have to just mute and leave for a second.
Yeah. Well, from my personal view, I think we are quite, we have developed the topic quite far, and I think it's, you know, we know where to go. So maybe we can also stop right at that point if you and Mike are happy with that, because I think we have exchanged the views and we know where to go. And we can make plans for the next steps. One would be that I would propose some. You're back. That's fine. I just said maybe it's okay. We've now identified possible ways to go, and maybe we can really stop here at this point and go further next year somewhere. I would propose some dates for next meetings. Let's say something on something doodle-ish, yeah. So we can decide on the next meeting. In the meantime, collect further ideas and yeah, have an invitation to the whole interest group to contribute. Yeah, that would be now the way to go, in my opinion. So not to wail too long on this. If you, I don't want you to prevent you from uttering your opinions and going on. It's I don't want to be so paternalistic.
As long as you're happy with what has happened in the last 2 sessions, this hasn't been so great because there's not enough of us here really to get a range of different opinions. But if you're happy with what's happened, I think we can call it an end if we're all happy with it.
Yeah, I think so. Even if it doesn't, let's say, it's not the number of people, it's their contributions, you know.
Yeah.
You can have 50 people in the room and no one talking. This doesn't help. It's better to have than 2 in the room and they got, and you get further. Okay, but thank you very much for being here. Yeah, it was really wonderful together with you, and I'm looking forward future projects and future development. And I'm absolutely sure that with you it will work and will come to a good point. Yeah.
Thanks for relaunching this as well.
I try my very best. Thank you. Okay. See you then next time. Yeah.
Bye.
Have a nice
Yeah.
evening.